Hey, this is going to be a tutorial to show how to spline model Clunk, or at least his gun from Clunk from Awesome Knot. So I found their website here, and it's kind of nice because it gives you a very nice 360 turntable of the little figure that they have. So it's nice to be able to kind of look and see how some of the hidden details here are kind of handled. So what I did was I did a screen capture of just the gun here, and then I brought it into Photoshop and generated this image from it, just kind of tracing over the shapes and adding a little bit of shading just to let me know certain parts are round, and trying to recreate the gun in just a orthographic side view. So we can see that this section here kind of comes all the way through, and then it'll come up around this section here in the back. So that's what we're going to try to do with just spline modeling. So go ahead and get started with that. This is the size of the image. So the image that I made in 3ds Max is going to be 30 by 17.14. So that's the size that I created here for the gun. And so I've got my reference set up there. Alright, so starting in the left view here, with spline modeling I can go ahead and set up some circle spline shapes then I can use to create just specific sections of this, and I'm going to build it in individual pieces. That way it'll make it a little easier. So I'm just going to start with a circle, and I'll drag it out to basically where the top of the circle meets the corners here in the side view. And then I can just rotate this, and now I'm going to right click and convert to an editable spline. I'll go into spline mode and select the spline, and I'll rotate this look like about 10 degrees, and then I'll just kind of line this up. Now with that being done, I've got another reference image here just so I can kind of see what's going on the inside of the gun here. So this is the outer circle, so I'm going to scale down. So I'll just hold shift and I'll scale in basically the thickness that I think this is going to be. Now the next part is going to get shift dragged back, so I'm going to move it, hold shift and move back, and then I'll scale down again. So I'll take this inside barrel, the inner dimension, inner diameter here, and I'll shift and drag that back in. So this is creating the outside diameter of this gun, and then the inside diameter of the gun, and then the shaft coming back here. And now I will hold shift and scale down again so I get this second inset part, and then I'll shift drag that back. So something like that. And now if I go back to the left view, I can see where I've kind of drug these back to. And now I'll take my outer diameter again, and in the left view hold shift, and I'll drag this back into the gun, and I'm just going to scale it, not shift this time, just scale. And I'm going to kind of line this up. Let me turn off my angle snap toggle so that I can rotate at any degree I want to. It won't snap to different degrees. And I'll scale this up again just slightly. And that should be fine for starting the gray section of the gun barrel. And like I said, I'm just going to leave this as its own part. So now what I have to do is join all these together. There's a cross-section tool here in Edit Spline mode that I can use to create lines that go in between all of these. So I have to connect this all together. So what I'll do is I'm going to hit F3 just so I can go into my wireframe mode, and I'll go to cross section, and I'll start at the very back of the outer diameter of the gun, come in, and then work my way into the inner diameter. So I'm just going to click, all of my sections there. So I just kind of went inward, worked my way forward, and then went inward. So now I can turn that off, and I can turn off spline mode. Now if I apply a surface modifier to this, come down to surface, I get something that looks very weird. So one, I need to change my threshold here. This threshold is basically looking at, if I come back to the edit spline and I come to vertex mode, right now each one of these line segments here, they're not welded together. None of the vertices are really welded. The splines are welded. These vertices are welded along the spline, but they're not welded along this cross section that I did. And that's fine, I don't need to weld, but what the threshold is looking at is how close are these vertices to one another so that it can weld. So what I can do is come back to threshold, and I don't want to go all the way up to 1, because if any of these are within a 1 distance of one another, then what's going to happen is it's going to weld them. So I want to go to a really low number. Normally I type in like 0.01 or 0.1. Alright, so that changes how that looks, and now this looks a lot better. The steps, the number of steps that I have here, that's really going to add a lot of polygons depending on how round I want this, but it's also going to add edge loops in these sections. So right now if I were to convert this to an editable poly, so I can just do that, and let me change my color here to something a little darker. And now if I turn on my wireframe again, I can see that I've got a fairly nice shape to start out with, but I've got a lot of extra edge loops in here that I don't need. Like from the front, from the back of the barrel to the front of the barrel, I can double click these rings, whoops, hold control, double click, and now I can hit control backspace, and I can remove all those extra edges all the way to the front. And now I can do the same through here. And I'm leaving the ones on the very edge, control backspace to get rid of them. I can also hit remove, but I have to hit control. If I don't, and I just hit remove, it ends up keeping all the vertices, and I don't want those, and that creates a lot of multi-sided polygons. So if I hold control and hit remove, well, sorry, edge mode, control remove, that'll disappear. That's the same thing as the shortcut backspace that I was doing. So again, I can come through, select these, control backspace, I'm just holding control and clicking all these, control backspace, control backspace. I don't really mind how this pattern looks on the inside of here. I don't really need this to look this way. If I wanted to change this pretty quickly, I could just go in and select this, because there's actually more polygons than I need here. And I'll just hit grow and select all these, and I'll hit delete. So what I could do instead is I'll go to border, now that I have a border edge here, and I'll deselect my ones at the top and my ones at the bottom. Okay. Then I'm going to hit bridge, but I'm going to hit the settings, and it's going to bridge all the way across, but I'm going to change my bridge segments to 2. and I'll hit the check mark. And then I'll go to vertex mode, and I'm going to target weld my ones at the top and bottom. And this is a lot cleaner and a lot less polygons than what I had there before. And I could do the same thing in the back. Also, what I could just do in the back is I'll click grow and I'll click delete, and I'll just leave it as is, because this back section of the gun is actually sunk in to the mesh that I'm going to have for this section of the gun. So since those polygons are never going to be seen back here, I just delete them. I don't need them. That rhymed. Alright, so now that I have that, I've got the basic barrel shape of my gun. Now I can create the next section of my gun. So I can name this or whatever. I'm just going to leave it for now. So I'll go back to circle, and I'm going to create another circle that again is about the height of this. And actually for this one, if I wanted to, I mean honestly I could just create a cylinder, but just to go over the steps for spline modeling, I'll keep working this way. I want to turn my angle snap toggle back on though, so that way I can rotate directly to 90 degrees, and I'll turn it back off just so I can kind of line up this angle to the gun. And make this a little bit bigger. So here you can see that the back section of the barrel of the gun is going to be sunk into my other mesh, so I don't need to really worry about how that is. Alright, so I've got my circle again. So I'm going to, again, right click, convert to editable spline, go into spline mode, and I'm going to just hold shift and drag this back, and that'll create a second circle. And then I can just not hold shift, and I'll rotate this. Might have been a good idea to pick a separate color, because this is going to be hard to see against the other part here. So I'll just line that up with this angle as much as possible, and scale it down uniformly. And kind of line this up where I think these come together. And then once again I use cross section, and I'll cross section the one to the other. Now you can see here my bounding box that I have is kind of at an angle. That's because I've rotated my circle that I started with. I'll show you how to fix that once we get this set. So that's it for the the next section of the gun here that we have. So now I can apply surface, and if we're lucky it kept the settings that we used before, and it did. And I'll just keep the steps of 5. I'm fine with that. So I'll take that and convert it to an editable poly. I'm going to change the color here again. Maybe we'll go with something else. And again, get rid of any edge loops I don't need. So double clicking and holding control to select all those, control backspace. That's good there. And I'll grow this out. And I'll hit delete. Now what I'll do is I'll select the border edges. I'll just do one set of them first. I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to scale this in to where it just goes inside of the gun. So I'm kind of conserving polygons this way. And then I'll select the back one. I'm going to go in the left view though. And I'm just going to scale this in again. I can't really see where it's going, but I want to scale it up to basically where it would go into the next section of mesh here that would be hiding the fact that it was gone. So I'll just hold shift. And I'll just scale it in pretty far just to make sure I've covered everything for now. And that's the next section of the gun. Again, another separate piece. And I'll be able to attach these all together after the fact. Alright, so those sections are done. Now we've got a little bit more of a tricky shape to create here and here. So for these parts, so I've got like a kind of a not a hemisphere, yeah, kind of like a hemisphere or a quarter of a hemisphere. So for this, I'm going to start with a line, and I'm going to just click. I'll click down here and drag this direction. Same way you would do in Photoshop for creating paths. If I click and hold drag, I'll change this vertice automatically to Bezier control. And then I'll click inside of my mesh. I'll click, I'm going to go into wireframe here. If I hold shift, I'll get a straight line automatically coming off of here. Turn my wireframe back on. So I'll hold shift. I'll just come up to where I think this kind of goes into the mesh a little bit. And then I'll come back and click where I started. And I'll say yes. Okay, so I've got that now. That's just a shape that I can start with. So this isn't obviously going to have any dimensions to it. So what I need to do is I need to add a curve that runs this direction and one that runs this direction. So again, I'm going to use a circle just as a starting point, and I'm just going to click and drag out a circle to start with. I'm going to convert it to an editable spline, and I'm going to get rid of the top two segments, so I'm just going to delete those. Now with the part that I've left, I'm going to go into spline mode, select it, and I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees, turn my angle snap toggle back on, 90 degrees. I'm just going to move it out of the way for now. Now if I come back and I highlight the line that I drew out, I can use this attach feature, and I'll attach my other spline that I created. Now these are all one object. So I'll go back into spline mode, make sure I turn off attach, and I'm going to move my other spline to where these kind of line up. I don't need them to line up just yet, but I'll fix that. So I'm going to rotate this spline 10 degrees, kind of like that. And now I'm going to try my best to scale this to where this vertice lines up with this top line and these line up with the bottom line. So I'll first kind of move this spline somewhere in between the two, and I'm just going to scale them up. Again, kind of hard to see. I'll just turn my wireframe off, my shaded view off. So that's pretty close. Can make it a little bit bigger. Alright, like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my snaps. So I'm going to click on my snaps here, and then I'll right click, and I'm going to turn off grid points, and I just want vertex, so if that's not checked I need to check it. Now I'm going to, on my cursor here, my transform cursor, I'm going to highlight both the Y and Z direction, and I'm just going to click. What this is going to do is it's going to lock my my move translation to only moving in the Y and Z direction. Now as I get close to a vertex, I can see I get this crosshairs that pops up. This lets me know that it's trying to snap. So if I now click and I move, it's kind of hard to tell where my spline went to, but as I get close to where I want to snap it to, it's going to snap from the one vertex that I had to the other, which is going to line those up. Computer froze for a second. I was kind of scared. So I'm going to line that up like that. So now I need to join up these sections, and I'll probably end up deleting this line I created here or splitting it up in one way. But I've got that to start with. I'm going to turn my snaps off. I can either click this or I can just hit S. S toggles that on and off. Okay, so now if I go into spline mode, or vertex mode, and I do create line, and I hit S and turn my snaps back on, I can draw a line and snap to each one of those vertices, so I can get a nice segment, spline segment here set up that I can then turn into a curve. So what I can do is I'll turn my snaps back off, and I want to make sure I have this vertice selected. So if I just select on it, I can kind of move around to make sure I have it, and then I can right click to just snap it back to where it was. While this is selected, I can right click, and I've got 4 options here for how to smooth between these vertices. So if I go to smooth, I'll get a nice smooth curve between these points. So this basically has a tangent here that says between here and here, smooth this vertex between those. And that'll work. If that's not curved as much as I want it to, I can always right click and go to Bezier or Bezier corner. If I go to Bezier, the handles are locked to one another, so I could scale this out or scale it down to change that curve. Might actually want to scale this out just a little bit, just to have a better curve there. Okay. So I'm going to take this same curve that I've created here, and I'm going to hold Shift and drag it forward. Now what I want to do is I'm going to take this same curve and scale it to where it fits between, let me go in the left view here so we can see better. I'll scale it to where it fits, it looks like it has the same height as here and here. I'm going to rotate this back to there. Move this down a little bit, and I'll scale it. That's pretty good there. So again, I'm going to use my snaps, and I'm going to snap from this vertex to that vertex. So I'll turn my snap back on, click the Z and Y direction here, and now I can lock that to this only moving those 2 directions. So I can now drag from here to here, and those are now snapped together. And I'll turn my snaps back off. I'm going to go ahead and delete this line. I don't need it anymore. It's mostly, I just had it there for drawing out the shape. I'm trying to think if I actually need, yeah, I still need these. I don't know if I need this one just yet. I'm going to leave it there for now. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'll probably have to divide each one of these segments to have an extra vertice directly in between them. So what I can do is I can select each one of these segments. So I got each one of those selected. Need that one as well. And I'm going to click divide. So that's going to add a vertice in between all of these. The reason I'm doing that is because Actually, wait, why am I doing that? I may not need to do that. Okay. Because I'm going to connect these all together. Okay, so I'm going to go into vertex mode first. And I'm going to create a line, turn on my snap, clicking S, snap from here to here, and from here to here. Because I need all of my polygons here to basically be four-sided. Otherwise, if they're three-sided, like these ones are, I'll get tris here, and I don't want to get that for this model. So what I think I really want to do is divide here and here. If I divide here and here, yeah, I think I selected too many before. I do want to do this, but I didn't want to select that one. So that was a problem that I did before. Deselect there, and now divide. I kind of knew what I was doing there. Go back to vertex mode. Come to create line, and now turn my snap back on. And I'll snap from there to there on these, and that makes these four-sided, and now these are four-sided. Alright. You have to watch when you have your snaps turned on, because it is going to want to snap to other things that are in your scene, not just what's selected, so you have to be careful with that. Okay, so there's that section. So that'll be nice and completed. So if we look back at the model from the website, on the back... Oh wait, we don't need that for this section. So I think this one's going to be just about done. I just need to have a line that goes from the front to the back there. And now if I apply surface, I should get a really nice shape out of this. So surface, hit F3, and yeah. It pretty much works the way I want it to. If I find that any of this is too wide, I can either convert this to an edit poly and just scale in these sections, or I can come back to the shape that I have started here. Turn off my snaps, and I can just select all the vertices in this front section. Oh. I want to change this to use pivot point center. So I could just scale that in. And I'll probably also need to scale in this back section. That's better. Okay, now let's look. Yeah, that's a little closer to what we want. Alright, so now this one, again, I can convert to editable poly. Now you can see we got a lot of vertices here. So if I have too many edges or polygons or whatever here, I can just turn this down here. So let's look at it being 3, and now I'll convert to editable poly. That's going to be a little bit better. So I'll go to my edges. I'm just going to get rid of these ones. Don't need those. The other ones I pretty much need for now. I can decide later if I want to get rid of any. And all of the ones in the front here are sunk into the mesh, into the front mesh here. So if I grow this out, So all of these ones you're never even going to see, so I'll just delete them. And again, kind of just saving on some polygons there. And I'll change this to a different color. Okay, so that covers that section there. Let's do another kind of easy section here that we can do. So now I've got this part. I'm going to go ahead and hide these other pieces for now, just to get them out of the way. So for this part, it's slightly tricky, but not too bad. I only say it's slightly tricky because it has the circle part within it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a circle, and I'll convert this now to an editable spline. Go to spline mode. I'll select that circle. I'm going to hold shift, and I'm going to drag this over to here. Now if I go to create line, and I zoom in and I turn on my snaps, I'm going to snap from the top sections here and create a line, and right click to finish, and then I'll click and snap to the bottom sections. Now that I have these two lines in here, something I can do is trim out these parts that I don't need. So I'm going to go to trim, and I'll trim those pieces away. I still want to keep these four-sided, so right now I'll actually leave that the way it is. I'll select my spline sections that I've created here though. I'm going to turn on my wireframe, or turn off my shaded view just so I can look. So this part kind of goes back into the kind of pivot point, pivot section that was in the drawing. So it looks like it's going in a little bit. And if we look at the reference that we have here, we can actually see that these sink in. So come back to max, and I'll just select these sections. I'm going to turn off my snap, and I'll hold shift, and I'll just drag this back in, and now I'll create line, and I'll snap it from here to here to here and to here. I don't want to have one that goes across here in the front, because then that'll close this off. I need this to be open because it's going to go back to the other circle part that makes up the rest. So I'm just going to leave that the way it is. So I also need to create lines from here to here. Weld vertices, I can say yes if I want to. I really don't need to, so I'm just going to say no. And it'll probably ask me that for all of these. Nope, not for that one. And that should finish that off. So now I'm going to go back in the left view. I'll hit F3 to show this again. So I'm going to now create a circle. And that kind of lines up nicely there. Just line it up a little better. So this circle makes up this section here, but I need these parts of this circle to connect to this inset part. So what I can do is I'll select the inset section that I have, and I'm going to attach it to the circle. Now if I go to my vertices, well, it's going to be hard for me to basically line these up the way I want to, because I don't have any vertices to line some of these up to. These ones here will just go off to the side, so I can get those out of the way by creating create line turn on my snap. There we go. I zoomed out and I couldn't get back in. So anyway, I need to have sections here. Otherwise I'll have a try here. And I don't really want to have that. So let's see the way I could go about this. I could divide these and then create lines that connect here, but I think that's going to give me some weird topology. So I think what I can do is select computer froze up again. There we go. Select those sections and select each of my line segments here, and I'm going to divide them. And if I've done this a good way, I can now go to vertex mode, go to create line, and now I'll turn on my snaps, and I can draw lines out for here. And that's going to give me a lot cleaner topology. Whoa. Sometimes you accidentally click and drag and that'll happen. Oops. And then I want to come down through here. Alright. That should be pretty good. Now if I select this spline that I have here, turn off my snaps, I'll go back into my left view and hit F3 to turn back on shaded view. I'm going to hold shift and scale this out. And this section is pulled back, so it's kind of a bevel. Like that. And then I'm actually going to continue this piece. I was going to stop and just have another inset cylinder part, but I'm just going to use what I have here. I'll hold shift, go back in my left view. I'll scale out for this next section. I'll pull this back out just a little. Go back to the left view, scale, hold shift and scale out. And then going to hold shift and drag this back. I don't really care how far back I go on this, just for now, because I'll probably come in a bit more on that. But I basically want to have a duplicate of, I was trying to look around this, but this section of the gun here continues all the way through and has another one. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have my one created here. Actually, wait, I can just do this. This is going to work better. I'm going to finish out this piece here. So what I need to do is cross section, and I can cross section these together because I've drug them all out from one another, and that should finish up that one section. But now what I can do is I can take this whole piece that I've created, turn off cross section, and I'll select all of these. I'll hold shift and I'll move this over to make a duplicate of it, and I'm going to rotate this. I guess I'll do this from center point. rotate 180 degrees. I'm going to go back to my front or my left view and just make sure everything, yeah. I just wanted to make sure everything's still lined up when I rotated there. If I unhide all, I'm going to drag what I have here over to where it comes past this bottom section that I have here. Kind of like that. Now I'll take the spline section that I have here and drag this over to where it just comes out on the other side. Now I need to connect this together. Now I can't cross-section this because this circle that I created and this circle that I created, this one's actually rotated. Now I could just rotate this back around and hope maybe this works, and it should. Now I should be able to cross-section from here to there, and I can. So let's take a look at what this looks like with surface applied to it. There we go. And I may not need 3 steps here, so I'm going to turn this down to 2. Because I've added more sections around here, I don't need to have as much to have the same outcome that I had for these other ones. So convert this to an edit poly and kind of look at this and see what I've got. So again, just going back and cleaning up, double click, oops, not delete, control backspace. Again, get rid of some of this extra stuff here. If I was making a high poly model, I could keep that stuff in and I'd be just fine with that. Alright, the inset section here, keeping the one that's on the inside. Get rid of those. And control backspace to clean up all that extra mesh that I don't need. And I'll leave everything else there because I can't really delete those. Oh, I clean up this side. Oh crap. I just broke part of my desk. And control backspace. And this is how I'd really just go about continuing to model this. I'm not going to finish the entire thing just because I think this will give you a good understanding of how to use spline modeling and how to approach different parts. I mean, really all that there is left for this is the top section and the part coming out of it, and this could be a cylinder. So hopefully this makes some sort of sense. Yeah, that's it. Take that.